So right now we are done writing our value notes, and we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the backside. The backside is, a good place for us to practice using value, our tools, our pencils, and see what they can do. So let me go over a couple of things and I'll let you get to work on this. Starting with, the pencils that I usually work with for shading, pretty easy. As far as the shading pencils we have, it's a 4B and it's a 6B. I usually use a regular number 2 pencil, and for super fine lines and fine details I use a mechanical pencil. So as far as the pencils go, you kind of look at a scale going all the way up to B's, like 6H, 4H, 2H, and then right in the middle you're gonna have your HB, which is usually what a number 2 pencil will be, a regular school number 2 pencil will be, and then you'll start going towards your B's, like 2B, 4B, and 6Bs. So the ones that we have available for you guys to use are 4 and 6B. These are gonna be on, the H stand for the hard pencils, the ones that'll give you a lighter gray. The B for the bold pencils that have a softer lead will give you a darker value. And the reason we use these is because they go down on your paper much smoother, much more even than these. So I'm pretty sure if you continue with art, especially if you go to Mr. Costa's drawing class, you will have the opportunity to work with a lot broader range of shading pencils. But for us, these are basically the ones that we use. 4B, 6B, and HB, and a mechanical pencil. And mechanical pencils usually have a same type of lead, an HB, right? Somewhere near the middle. So, looking at this practice sheet. When we're coloring or trying to add value to these shapes right here, the first thing you gotta remember is, or pay attention to, is where the light source is coming from. So for example, starting with this cube. The cube is probably one of the easiest ones because it has these nice boundaries, and you just have to think about what side is getting the most light, what side is getting the least light. So the one that's getting the most light is gonna be this top, so that's gonna be your light side. Light, this will be your medium side, and this one, since it's the furthest away, will be your dark side. So light, medium, dark, that's kind of how we're gonna think about adding value. Sphere, looking at here, light side, medium, and dark away from it. So this cylinder, you'll have the light side at the top. The one furthest away from it is this side, and you'll just make a nice blend going to a medium value going this way. So same thing with this cone. You'll have a light side here, and then you'll have a gradual change from mediums to darks going this way. That's the way we're gonna think about it. LMDs, light, mediums, and darks. So, when I'm shading, a lot of it is gonna be learning how to control the pencil. For example, if I make a line with the point of my pencil, it's gonna be nice and thin and sharp. Whereas if I was to hold it towards the end and I make a mark with the side of the lead, it's gonna give you something a little bit softer, a little bit broader. So depending on what it is I need to cover, that's how I'm gonna use this pencil. So for example, for this light side on my cube, I'm going to use a pencil using the side of it, and like with very small amount of pressure, I'm going to add value to the top. Now this one is my medium side, so for this one I'll hold it a little bit closer and kind of use the same thing, but I'm gonna try to add more pressure to the point. And then for my last one, which is my dark side, I'm gonna, lean it up a little bit, so I'm using more of the point with a little bit more pressure, and add my dark side. So, we have this practice sheet on the back so that you can practice the use of pencils and different shading tools. All right, so light, medium, dark. Now, with something that's round, for example, like this cylinder, this cone, you're gonna have to practice really the use of starting dark on one side, and as you move across your paper, easing up on the pressure and getting lighter and lighter and lighter. You know, a nice little fade. You know, this is a blending technique. Getting lighter, 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 lighter as you go across. So for example, this circle which we're trying to shade into a sphere, it's nice and round. So starting at the bottom with my dark edge, and as I go across, I'm getting lighter, less pressure, until I hit this light spot. You know, the thing with working a round surface, it just takes a lot of practice. You want to follow the contour of the shape. You know how it's round. So when I shade this, I'm trying to work in these little round shapes here. You know, to get my sphere. Now, one of the good things about pencil, I don't know if you guys have been watching this, but I'm not really paying attention to how far outside the line I go, because I can always take an eraser and clean that up. I can also, like for this little area here, I went too much with the pencil, so I can take my eraser, you know, and use that to erase some of the value out. Now, cylinder. You know, this one's light, so I'll add a super light value to it. And then it goes, since the light's coming here, this is the furthest away from the light. This will be the dark, faded to a medium. So I can apply a lot of pressure there. And as I move across, I'm releasing the pressure so it gets lighter as it moves across the shape. Same thing with this one. It's gonna be my light spot, dark down here. And as I move across, I am releasing the pressure to make it seem round. Now, once I have those shapes shaded in, I'll take my eraser. You know, this one has like a bunch of marker or something on it. And I'll erase the lines and clean up the edges. Now, looking at some of the tools, and I'll go ahead and start with this one, because especially when you start using like the 6B and 4B pencils, you really don't want to use your hand to smear, or some people, like, they'll blow their crumbs off. You want to use one of these drafting brushes because it'll make sure that you don't smear your work. Now, these shapes right now could use a little bit like finishing touches as far as making the valley look a little bit smoother. So let's talk about what are some of the other tools and how you can use them to make your work look more finished. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna add some value to this practice sheet. I'm just trying to put a nice medium value on this so I can show you the different options you have to smooth these out. Because a lot of times one of the biggest things we have to do is try to make stuff look even, and these tools will really help in that. Okay, so there I have some value. So let's look at some of our options. You have a chamois, which is a piece of leather. You have stumps, which is like a big lollipop stick. It's rolled up paper that's glued down. And if you would please, you know, I know you can see like the edge where they glue it down. Please don't start taking these apart, because once they become unraveled, they're trash. They're no longer good. There's different sizes of stumps. You have Q-tips. You have makeup sponges. So let's see if I could try to explain this the best. So I have a medium value. I want to make this nice and even, kind of like as a base or a starting point. You know, a lot of times some people say, I don't know where to start shading. This is what I recommend. put down a medium gray and then blend it in with one of these tools to make it nice and even and build off of that. Once you have like a middle tone, you can go in with darker color or darker pencil and make your darks darker, or you can go in with an eraser and anything that's lighter, erase it out. But chamois, you know, for the most part, I take this, you know, and it doesn't matter what side I'm working with, even though some people say, well, this thing's dirty and it has a lot of pencil. It's okay. Well, what you're trying to do is just fold it up, give it a nice part to rub with your paper with. And for the most part, when I'm using these tools, I'm using a circular motion. Not a lot of pressure, just, you know, light, medium pressure. And I'm not really pushing down too much. I'm just kind of putting it on the paper and using a circular motion to try to even that out. So that's a chamois. Chamois will give you a nice light value. It'll pick up a lot of the graphite. With the stump, you know, you can use a point, you can use a side. If you're trying to blend big areas like this, it's probably the best to use a whole side. If you're trying to blend small areas, then you could probably use a point. You know, let's say if I'm trying to make this boundary line here, I can use a point. Bigger areas, use a side, just like the chamois. Circular motions, probably the best way to use it. And, you know, I don't know if you could tell, but this stump will give you a little bit darker value than the chamois. The next one we have is a Q-tip. A Q-tip will do the same thing with the blending. You're just trying to get your graphite to look as even as possible. And remember, when we do this, this is just a starting point. You know, you can always go back in and add more value, makes things darker. You can get an eraser and erase things out that are lighter. And the last one I have is a cosmetic sponge. So I guess the one that, you know, the ones that are gonna be the smoothest is gonna be the cosmetic sponge and the chamois. The ones that are kind of darken up the value is gonna be the Q-tip and the stump. All right, so for example, I kind of shaded in these shapes. So since I have like this light top on this cube, I'm gonna take my chamois, I'm gonna fold it up to give it a nice little point, and I'm going to go over it to lighten that up a little bit. Next, I might be able to use, let's say, my Q-tip, this medium side. I'll go in here, nice round motion, or circular motion, not round, circular motion. Clean it up. And for the last one, for the dark side, I'm gonna use my my stump and come in here. And I'm using this kind of circular motion on this one too. And try to smooth this out with these tools. So those are some of the tools we have. Same thing with this, like this sphere. You know, starting down here on the dark side, like I said, going with the contour of the sphere. And as I'm moving across it, I am lifting up on the pressure, using small circular motions. And try and make it look more like an even tone. Nice even tone. All right. Same thing with this one, you know, starting here at the bottom, then gradually moving across it and lifting up on the pressure. So that's how you use these tools. I'm gonna erase this out a little bit because that's where the light's hitting it. and clean it up. And then my last thing, if I have any lines that went outside of the line, I come in with an eraser, erase those out. And that's how I want to clean it up and use those tools. Now, as far as the 2 value scales at the bottom, I recommend that you do one in pencil and then do one in color pencil. Because value, I know we're starting with pencil drawings, but it's not only for black and white, gray pencil drawings. It's also for color, depending on how much pressure you apply to your color pencil will give you different results, from a super light color all the way to a nice dark solid color. So 1 value scale in pencil, 1 value scale in colored pencil. Other than that, let me just tell you a couple of things that hopefully will help you as you are starting to shade your SpongeBob drawing. So you're gonna get the key. I guess we can call this the key of what it looks like. The main idea of adding value to your work is trying to look at a picture and match it up to its level of lightness or darkness. So for example, this is my value scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different gray tones. My job would be to look at something and see, compared to a value scale, how dark is it, and try to match that on here. So for example, let me zoom in a little bit. If you were to look at SpongeBob, this front side of him, and Patrick, which one's darker? Would you agree that Patrick is a little bit darker than SpongeBob? Now, for me, when I look at this picture, it kind of seems to me like these sponge holes on the front side of SpongeBob are about the same value as Patrick. So that means that when I'm adding gray to this, I'm gonna match those to Patrick. Those are gonna be pretty close to the same. The other thing, there's a lot of things on this that are gonna be left white. For example, the eyes, the sock, his shirt, Patrick's eyes, the lamp lights. A lot of those things are gonna be left white. So you can erase those things out as you're shading and use those to compare. For example, like the white of the sleeve and that little gray triangle inside of it. So that means you're gonna leave that white and this one will go like a light gray. And the other thing you can do is just compare things next to each other. Like for example, can you see that the front of SpongeBob is a little bit lighter than the side of SpongeBob? That means when you shade this, this will be just a little bit darker than the front. So that's the way I take it. Now, for those of you that don't know where to start, this was kind of the example I gave yesterday. Usually what I do is I'll add a light to medium tone to the shape I'm working with. Like for example, this is my example of SpongeBob at the front of him. And then once I have like that light medium gray, then I can go in with an eraser and erase anything out that's white. For example, I would like clean up where his eyes are. Anything that's darker, I can go in with the shading pencil and make it a little bit darker. And anything that's lighter, erase it out. Now, the good thing about this picture is that it is a cartoon, so it has outlines. For example, it has the outlines of the eyes. So I could take my darkest pencil would be the 6B and, put a nice bold line to separate the eyes from the body. He has like these little eyelashes. You can add those. And that's what's gonna start making it look more like a completed piece, the details. Now, some people like to shade in small sections at a time. Some people like to shade like in big sections, like, oh, I'm gonna take this whole side of this picture and go. The main thing I can tell you is just a little at a time. You're just trying to match, however dark or however light the picture is on here on your key to your paper. Now, I know this picture, this key is a little bit bigger, like on your SpongeBob drawing, this sock was cut off. So, you know, you're just shading what's on your picture, even though this one shows a little bit more, like this one shows like more of the Flying Dutchman, more of the sock. So we're just gonna, you know, cut it off about there, and that'll be your picture, right? So I'll go ahead and pass these out, let you guys get to work. A couple more things. Remember that this pencil, especially these blue ones, the shading pencils, you know, if you're shading and you have your hand on top of your paper and you're working, you're gonna get all that gray stuff under your hand. It's always a good idea to keep a piece of paper under and move it as you go, so your hand is not making contact with your paper and smearing your work. So you can either use this one, the key, or on the back table, there's a bunch of these half sheets cut out that we can use as practice paper. So you can use this as practice paper and as a guard for your picture. Also, what I've said to people is, if you don't know what it's gonna look like on your final picture, use one of these practice papers and practice using your tools on here, and practice, you know, whatever you're planning to do on your paper and you're not sure what it's gonna look like, you know, practice first on this piece of paper. So let's see, like, oh, I don't know what this is gonna do, but I wanna go in with the dark value and come in with the mechanical pencil for a fine line. Is that gonna work? Or I kind of feel like using the stump to blend some of this. What is it gonna look like? You know, use this practice paper first. If you're not sure what it's gonna look like on your final piece, use practice paper first. Other than that, I think I'm gonna let you guys get to work, because the best way to learn this stuff is by practicing. So go ahead and finish your notes first, you know, the back side of it with these shapes and with the value scales. And then once you're done with that, you can finish the pencil drawing for the SpongeBob. And once you get done with the line drawing, you can erase your grid and start shading. And last thing, I forgot, adding the cast shadow to these shapes. You know, if you're thinking about where the light's hitting it and where the shadow's gonna be thrown, you know, light coming off of this way, off this cube, is gonna throw a shadow coming this way. So a cast shadow might look something like that. Going off a cone, it's gonna throw a shadow maybe this way, you know, sun coming this way. With the sphere coming this way, it's gonna throw a shadow in this direction, so it might look something like that. And then for the cylinder coming off this way, it's probably gonna throw a shadow that looks something like that. And these cast shadows will be a little bit lighter than the darkest side, a little bit lighter, and then you can just color those in. So that would be your cast shadows. Finish the shapes, cast shadows, one value scale in pencil, one value scale in colored pencil. All right, I'll be going around if anyone has any questions. Remember that all the tools, the shading tools, are at the back table. I didn't pass them out because I'll just let you grab whatever it is you want to use. There's only one brush per table, so you guys share this. Remember, if you do any erasing and you have crumbs, don't use your hand. Don't blow on it. Just use a brush to not smear your work. So I think I'll let you guys get to work. That's all I have for you. Good luck. Have fun.